Again, this comes from my book, Your Journey to Being Yourself. This is the start of chapter 5. And I'm going to read to you a little bit of what is creating the problem. All right. So this is how it starts out. Think about your last relationship, the one that left you stuck to your couch with your coffee table littered with empty beer or wine bottles. Remember how you chastised yourself for ignoring your fears that pointed to the obvious signs that this person would eventually betray you. As you sat there, feeling ashamed, grasping for yet another Kleenex to absorb the streaming tears with self-contempt and scorn, you uttered, "I knew it. I knew they would do this to me." You can no longer deny the obvious. You're completely present to this pattern within yourself, where you ignore the obvious signs and your repeated self-sabotage in neglecting your internal truth. You feel embarrassed and stupid. Yet you also feel a sense of power and hope because you know you always saw through their deception. If only you could listen to yourself next time. Now, if you can't draw on a relationship memory, think of your favorite hobby. Maybe it's golf. Picture yourself on the driving range, golf clubs and empty baskets scattered about. Your fingers are calloused. Your shirt soaked through as the salt of the sweat burns your eyes. You rake another ball and begin your setup. Your anxiety starts to rise as your body creates an image of that one spot in your swing where there's a hitch. You know it's coming, but you're determined to stop it this time. As you take the club back, the fear escalates, the emotions stiffen you, and instead of starting your downswing with your legs, you come over the top with your right arm. It takes command, and you watch helplessly as the ball sails to the right once again. Redirecting your shame, you slam the club down in frustration and mutter, "I'm such an idiot. Why can't I get this?" Taking a seat on the nearby bench, you lean forward, examining your hands as the sweat from your brow drips past them. You're fully aware of your bad habit, the fear of its recurrence, and the self-loathing you'll feel when it happens again. But even though you're certain of these outcomes, you're just as certain you can overcome them. You stand back up, grab your 8-iron, and drag another ball into place. Regardless of the life circumstance, whether it's a relationship, a hobby, a friendship, or a career, have you noticed this pattern is always the same? Step 1, a fear you want to avoid repeats itself. Step 2, once repeated, self-recrimination and shame follows. Step 3, then comes the awareness that both fear and shame will be experienced. 4, the certainty of outcome and the recognition of the part you play creates a sense of power. 5, the combination of the self-inflicted certainty and power sparks hope that you can change the outcome. 6, that hope empowers you to try again. 7, the self-victimizing cycle repeats itself until you own the part you play, do the healing work required, and learn a new way. Welcome to the worst day cycle. Does that resonate? Isn't that everything we do? The same pattern over and over and over. That's because we're stuck reliving the unhealed emotions and trauma from our childhood, and it permeates everything we do. We can't avoid it. The only way you can stop this cycle is to learn emotional authenticity. Now, there's a bit of a problem in being able to do that. part of the way your brain works, it works to sabotage you. And so I'm going to read a little bit from that section. This comes from, I think it's chapter 2 on how the brain and emotions work. So I'm going to read this, how your brain processes, and then we'll get into some solutions and some more stuff. So how exactly does the brain process information? All information coming from the 5 senses is initially filtered through the right hemisphere, which first creates an emotional awareness and reaction. You feel before you ever think. The right side then creates a global picture and understanding based on past experiences, childhood. Then it passes that information over to the left. There it's trimmed down, categorized, and labeled and simplified before it's supposed to be passed back to the right. A final emotional sifting completes the fullest, most complete, and accurate assessment for our best use and highest intellect. The last biological step of reconnecting with the right side, our emotions, is what's missing in our personal and societal constructs. And it happens often. Our tendency to finalize conclusions with left-sided thinking, rooted in analysis and detailed computations, leaves rigid outcomes of self-deception and denial, which lacks the fuller, more inclusive, emotional neutralizer we need to achieve a balanced, more successful conclusion, judgment, or decision. According to Ian McGilchrist, the author of The Master and His Emissary, I'm going to take a break from the manuscript here. He did a neuroscientific analysis of the last 20 years of all neuroscientific research to a macro analysis of all the conclusions of how the brain works. All right. This is a quote from his book. Quote, although the left hemisphere does not see and cannot understand what the right hemisphere understands, it is expert at pretending that it does, at finding quite plausible but bogus explanations for the evidence that does not fit its versions of events. McGilchrist's work reveals that the left side is built to operate as a denial-based, self-rejecting monster and is less reliable than the right in matters of attention, perception, judgment, emotional understanding, and indeed, intelligence, as it is conventionally understood. Even when the left side is exposed to truth and evidence or facts regarding its faulty processing, it will produce reasoning and actions that are even more false, destructive, and completely wrong. But it doesn't stop there. In fact, when the left side is exposed to the truth of its faulty processing, it doubles down and sees the evidence of its falseness as fuel to keep pursuing its destructive line of thinking. To make matters even more dire, since the left is built to deny truth and accountability, placing responsibility for its own wrongdoing on others is its second nature. The left side's goal is to remain steadfast in its need to be right. It may even go as far as flipping the script and casting itself as the victim of the situation, much like a narcissist. As McGilchrist puts it, the left hemisphere is not keen on taking responsibility. If the defect might reflect on the self, it does not like to accept it. But if something or someone can be made to take responsibility, if it's a victim of someone else's wrongdoing, it is prepared to do so. That's at the heart of what we are all stuck in. I'm going to read one more quote from him. The master, which is the right hemisphere, realizes the need for an emissary, the left hemisphere, to do certain work on his behalf, which he, the master, must not involve himself with, and then expects the left side to report back to him. That is why he appoints the emissary in the first place. The emissary, however, knowing less than the master, thinks he knows everything and considers himself the real master, thus failing to carry out his duty to report back. That's at the heart of why we can't control our emotions. We have a society and a science community that keeps pushing intellect, left hemisphere logic. Well, all the neuroscience shows that's not the best way for your brain to work. Your brain, everything we process always comes in emotionally. We have an emotional reaction. You can't control your emotions because we haven't taught emotional authenticity and emotional intelligence. As I said in my live the other day, is like building the outer edges of a puzzle. That's all. All you get is the border. You need emotional authenticity, which gives you the plan and process to build the interior of the puzzle. That's the full, complete picture that both hemispheres need. And that's what my program, my book, and everything I've designed teaches you how to do. It completes the picture. It completes the process between both hemispheres so that you can create not only the best emotional response, but the best intellectual response.